Welcome back to Art 371, an introduction to video projection mapping. We're still focusing on Millumin today, but I wanted to introduce you to a really awesome open source app out there that works with Millumin, works with Touch Designer, works with a bunch of other apps out there. And it's called Syphon. On the Mac, the version is called Syphon. I'm on the page right now, syphon.v002.info. And for PCs, it's called Spout. This is a PC equivalent. Does a few other things out there that maybe it looks like it works with a few other app systems that Syphon does not, and vice versa. But basically, you can think of it as a bridge that uses your GPU, your hardware, to basically transfer video at frame rates upwards of 60 frames per second between one app and another. It's kind of this helper app, and it doesn't take a lot of extra resources from your computer to make it happen, which is really, really cool. So I'm going to show you how it works. Basically, while you're on here, you would basically come down to the bottom here and you would download the simple server client. You can also get the whole framework if you want to and look at the code, the Objective-C interface, and all of that fun stuff that kind of powers it if you wanted to try to help develop it further. But this one is there's a simple server and client, and you go to download, and it takes you here. You'll download this zip file off of GitHub, and you're good to go. Once you download that, you'll basically have a zip file here. Oops, I'm sorry. This is something I'll show you in a minute called Syphon Recorder. And then you'll get this cool combination here. And you have a client and a server. You're basically going to be using the client. We're not going to go over the server right now and what that can do. You would be using the client. So you can drag this into your applications folder like I have, and then I've put it on my dock. So it's like right next to Millumin and Touch Designer, right? So I can go ahead and open the client, just like a little mini app. And you're not going to see much. All you're going to get is this little window that pops up here. And a little bit you can kind of choose where your sources of video are coming from. Okay. So now that we have that, first thing I'm going to show you is how I can take a signal from Touch Designer and bring it into Millumin as kind of an input source. So if I go to Touch Designer, and there's some great documentation on Touch Designer's website while we're waiting for that to load up. Syphon and Spout in and out TOPs that you can basically add into your Touch Designer layout, right? So here I am. Here's the classic Touch Designer. So instead of maybe this out, I could kind of delete that. And if I bring up my panel here and go to TOPs, there it is, a Syphon in and a Syphon out. In this case, I want to take the Syphon out of Syphon. So I'm going to go ahead and there we go. Now you can see my signal is in the Syphon out, right? So I can go ahead and hide Touch Designer, and let's bring up Syphon. And boom! It automatically sees Syphon is sending a signal out from the TOP, and now it is receiving that signal, right? So I've got a signal there that's coming out. It's not doing a whole lot. Let's take a look. Oh, there we go. It just had to be active. Sorry, it kind of froze. I think when I did that, there we go. Instead of hiding it, there we go. Just kind of put it in the background. So there's my signal animated and flowing out of Touch Designer, right? So how do I get this into Millumin? Well, pretty simple stuff. So I'm going to go, I'm going to go back here and leave it on Syphon here. I'm just going to go back. There we go. And let's open up Millumin. I'm going to create a new project. And right out of the gate, if I come up to inputs, there it is. You're going to see, it even recognizes that it's Touch Designer going through Syphon Spout out, right? So now I can just drag that, and boom, I have a live source coming from Touch Designer that I can do anything I want with inside of Millumin. If I want to use Millumin as my mapper, or if I want to apply additional effects on it, or if I want to mask it, or anything like that, right? And if I go to Touch Designer, I can have them both running at the same time. I can also play around with things, and I can displace it and play with the mapping, and you'll see it's automatically updated. It's updated live inside of Millumin. So it's this like live stream that runs one into the other, right? So really powerful, and it's not just Touch Designer. There's all these other apps that you can bring in as well, which is really cool. So there's a whole list down here of all the different apps that can stream. You can take things from After Effects, from Cinema 4D. You can take things from all of these different apps that you can check out there. So a lot of these we haven't even come close to covering. But processing, if you've ever or worked with GitHub, there's processing right there. Pure Data, Max MSP. There's all these great platforms out there that you can use Syphon to send one signal to the other. Or, like I said, Spout, if you're on a PC, this is the version from Spout that you would use, right? So how do we do it the other way around? Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to Touch Designer. And we are going to, instead of having a siphon out, so I'm just going to undo here real quick. Get to regular out. So instead of my movie file in, I want to bring in a signal from Millumin, right? So I'm going to go ahead and delete that input. I'll go back to TOP, and now I'm going to do Syphon in, right? And I'll go ahead and connect that. Now there's nothing yet, because there's nothing coming out yet. And once there is, we have to kind of select it off that list there. So let's go ahead and just set up let me edit this board and get rid of the old Syphon in. And I'll just use a shader for right now. So go ahead and pop that up. And let's reset the mapping. There we go. And basically, all we want to do is go to output. And instead of going to like a full screen output, you're going to go down to setup output. So either up there, or you can always just hit the output button up there at the top. And instead of sending this out to my second screen on my computer right now, I choose Syphon. And I hit OK. And now if I go to Syphon, there it is. Syphon is now receiving my output signal instead of going to a projector, right? Which is pretty awesome. And now, if I go to Touch Designer, I have to choose it real quick. So I come on, if I click on my Syphon spout in, and I go over to its properties here, and I click on the little arrow, I can choose the Millumin canvas. And there we go. Millumin is now sending its signal to Syphon, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, I think hopefully you can come up with some different ways whether you want to work one way or the other. I tend to send things like Touch Designer into Millumin because I like to use Millumin for mapping, but you might, be vice versa. So it's a really awesome platform that you can do, and I hope it comes in handy, particularly since we've explored both these platforms, and you might have been like, man, I wish I could use this and send it into, I wish I could bring this one element that I learned how to do from Touch Designer into Millumin or vice versa. Now you can, okay? All right, so that's a little how-to on how Syphon and Spout's going to work between these two apps. The other thing I want to show you today is in Millumin, I want to begin to show you the interactions panel. We'll go into more advanced stuff here later in the week. But up here at the top, right next to the output button, you have this button that looks like a little mini keyboard, and it's called Interactions. And I want to show you some neat things that you can do with interactions. So I'm just going to add a few more items to my timeline here, so we have some stuff to work with, okay? All right, so if I go to interactions, interactions allow you to basically, it's kind of like how Syphon was, this outside platform that can interact with Millumin. Well, you can interact with devices, and there's a bunch of built-in things that allow you to kind of control when signals are played or when video is played inside of Millumin, which is pretty cool, right? So right off the bat, when I open up the interactions panel, if I want to add one, I hit this little plus sign in the bottom left corner, and I can choose what I want to do. Probably one of the simplest ones to start off with is just keyboard. So if I hit enter on my keyboard right now, which was just a default one, I can have it do an action. So I could have it play the next column, or play a specific column, or pause all media. So say I do pause all media, and I hit enter, which I just did, you can see everything paused. If I hit it again, it starts up again. So you can set up all sorts of controls here. I can do another keyboard option here, and I can say instead of enter, let's do space bar. Well, I guess it didn't want that one. Space bar by default does switch already. So let's do the plus sign on my keyboard, or as it says there, the equal sign. And I can say let's go specifically to column 4 when I do that, right? Okay, so now if I hit the plus sign, there we go, column 4, which is pretty awesome. Now, if I hit return, it still pauses. If I hit return again, it comes back on again. So I can continue to hit all these keyboards, and I can set up sort of like a control center on my keyboard just with single buttons, right? So maybe, actually column 4 instead of a keyboard would be like number 4 on my keyboard, right? And then same thing here, instead of enter, let's do number 3 and choose a specific and go to column 3. So now I can say go to column 3, go to column 4, onward and onward, and I could add these for column 2. So let's do column 2 and choose specifically number 2, right? And so now I have 2, 3, 4 as I hit the keys on my keyboard, which is pretty awesome. And still hit enter and I pause, hit it again, and I start back up again. So it's just a really nice way that you can kind of start to lay out your keyboard and do some different things. You know, there's also a transformer here that you can bring up, which can kind of switch or toggle. And you can kind of play around between minimum and maximum versus output between minimum and maximum. You just kind of have to kind of see what it does. See, when I hit number 2, it jumps to 1. Now, if I did that to toggle, it flips back. It's like, so it's just more of a momentary. If I turn it off, it shuts off. If I hit it again, so there we go. You'll get some different results as you hold these down, like toggle. I have to release it for it to actually function. It's a little weird. I usually just leave it in switch mode with these keyboard inputs, but you can have fun with that. Let's see. I could change a different action on here. Like I said, there's pause all media, launch specific column, launch next, launch previous. So I could put like, how about if I did like an arrow key, right? So I could go ahead and do keyboard again. This time hit back arrow, and that would be launch previous column. And then keyboard again, and forward arrow would choose launch next column. Cool. So now this goes back on my columns, this goes forward on my columns. So now I have a forward back arrow button combo. That could just be something that you set up and keep in all of your systems, you know. Hit return to pause it, arrow buttons to move through columns, just as a shortcut so you don't have to do a bunch of mouse clicks. So, kind of fun. Beyond that, yeah, you can set audio master, video master, change column transitions, do a few other things there. And then you can also, it looks like you can set specific things to happen, like speed controls and render sizes and opacities and all sorts of things. So I don't know if I set opacity, what exactly that's going to do on the layer. We'd have to experiment a little bit more. So anyway, that's one simple one we can do right out of the gates. Let me delete all of these keyboards. Let's look at another one on here. Let's go down. This is kind of a cool one under audio. I can set up my microphone to do an action based on amplitude or peak. I have learned amplitude doesn't work as well. Peak works pretty good. Basically, I have to hit the peak. So I can set like, if I talk here and I hit that peak, which is the like top bar with my voice, I can make it do something, right? So I can say, go to next column. Go, 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 go. You know, it's kind of fun. I can actually like make this interactive in a way and have it change based on me making sound or the audience making sound, but maybe it has to be a certain loudness level to it. Maybe that wasn't enough. Or maybe I want to make it really quiet. As you can see, my keyboard as I talk is now moving all through them each time I say a word, right? Bup, 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 bup. There we go, back again. So it's kind of a cool feature that you can do there. And again, you can set any of those same actions we had before based on voice, or I could have it lower, and I have to really talk loud to change it. There we go. Okay, so it's kind of a cool feature. You can have a microphone set up in the space and, you know, ask the audience to clap or make some kind of sound to change the audio, right? When I do amplitude, it tends to just switch through constantly, and I know it might have to do, yeah, I don't know. There's not a lot of, like, under transformer. Check, check. You can calibrate it. so that it goes at like certain peaks, but I haven't been able to make it work very well yet. So you can kind of, you can see that's the off state. And then learn on, and see if that works now. Dot, 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 dot. Now you have to play around with this one a bit more. Toggle, 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 toggle. Yeah, it's still not quite doing what I want it to do. And then there's a linear. So these are all different options under the transformer. Like I said, for just simple switching and stuff, I think peak works better. It's more intuitive. I can set the level exactly where I need it to go to switch. There we go. Or if I want to have it low, it's not going to switch at all. So, kind of a cool feature there. You can set what your audio input. Mine's my Sennheiser USB headset. You can also do what's called Soundflower. This is how you could have things change according to MIDI input. So you could have sound going from like a program like Ableton Live, and then Soundflower is kind of like Syphon, but for audio. It's a virtual MIDI device that you can run and will be kind of a bridge between an audio device and your video device. Soundflower also works with Touch Designer for some of its audio input devices. So there's more things you can do in Millumin with audio input, with effects and stuff like that, but that's why you have a couple of these different audio options going on. All right, let's delete that. I'm going to close real quick and just go back to column 1, just so we have something to work with. All right. Another cool one is the scheduler. You can decide, you can make Millumin change automatically. So you can say periodically, like every 5 seconds, switch to the next, launch the next column. So it should be coming every, I don't know why it's still on 10 seconds. I don't know if 10's like the minimum, I guess, that it can do. There it goes. It's going every 10 seconds. So we can do periodically, every hour, every day, every weekend, which is kind of cool. And it's just switching automatically. This works really well. I've used this system for like installations before too, where I say I want it to launch every day, and then I can set an hour. I can say at like 7 a.m. once somebody turns the projector on, I want it to launch column 1 and play the video, the installation. Or you could just have it like automatically slideshow through. Like I said, if you want to go periodically, you could say every 10 seconds, every 30 seconds, and have it switch. And, you know, don't have to just stick with change next column, can do all the same actions that I could do before. Pause media, set video master, and some of this layer stuff as well. So I have it, like I said, I'm not exactly sure change opacity and layer, what it's supposed to do on something like that. So you have to experiment. I use it more to like launch stuff. So again, days, weekdays, hours, periodically, etc., etc. So another nice feature inside of Millumin. And I think beyond that, there's a lot more we can do here. If you've ever worked with an Arduino, we'll talk about in more advanced lessons how you can take input from Arduino, like a sensor in the room will activate video. There's some cool stuff we can do with a leap motion and a Connect sensor, but again, that's a little bit more advanced. We'll look at that again in the future here. Beyond that, I believe you can also have time code happen. So I could say, let me have this work here. Let's see what we can get it to do. And let's see what we can get it to do. So maybe at like 8 seconds. So let's see. At 7 seconds is fine. Manage. I could have it pause. Let's see. Yeah, this one's a little bit more limited, but at 7 seconds pause, so let's see if it does it. 2, 3. That one did not work out. I'll have to work out on that one a little bit more. I haven't messed around with the time code input. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure exactly. It's supposed to, I thought, 7 seconds in and then run that. Well, let's try switch. Maybe it's because it didn't have one chosen. Let's see if that does it. Nope, still not working. So I'm not sure if that's because it's on the timeline, but we'll take another look at that in the future. But there's lots of other things to work with. If you do want to control MIDI, you can have MIDI inputs come in and launch different columns based on MIDI input. There's a lot of different stuff we can do. DMX is for lighting. OSC signals, those can actually be communicated from other apps as well. And then, like I said, Blob Tracker, Leap Motion, and Connect, those are all kind of like sensor-based. Blob Trackers use web cameras, so we'll look at those in a future lesson. But hopefully you can play around a little bit and try out some of these other options. I thought the audio one was really fun for some basic interaction, and then the scheduler is a really important one as well. Okay. And there's this manage buttons or manage devices. This is where you actually like set up some of these more advanced ones like MIDI and OSC and DMX. Electronics are for Arduino. I can choose different types of Arduinos out there. Oh, you know what? Here was the time code. Interesting. So it might be time code from another device that triggers it, not the time code like on the timeline in here. So that's why we didn't have that working. Okay, that makes more sense. Cool. So we'll get back into interactions, but I wanted to just kind of introduce that today along with Syphon, and hopefully it allows you to kind of expand out a little bit and see what all Millumin has to offer. I almost forgot, I wanted to show you that there's a great app on Syphon as well on their website called the Recorder. And this is a great little system that allows you to just record your output from your mapping software. So if I open up Syphon Recorder right now, there it is. It's a nice little unit. And if I go to Millumin, I can take that same desktop that I've got going again and then go to output. And instead of the screen or the projector that I was going to, I can choose Syphon again and hit OK. And you'll see there it is. It's getting a nice signal from it, right? So I can take a snapshot picture and I can save that in preview. So I can just get like a nice screen cap out of it. But the big one is being able to record. Unfortunately, if I record right now, it's going to interfere with my screen recording that I'm doing in QuickTime already. But normally I would just hit this record button. You record for as long as you want. You hit stop, and then it'll open up that video in QuickTime, and then you can save it out. So a really nice feature, just like sending your signal out of Syphon, you can also send it to the Syphon Recorder and record good content. Now, we all know Touch Designer already has a built-in recorder, but Millumin does not. So I thought that would be a nice feature for you to be able to do. So enjoy, and I hope that works out for you. And just another tool for the toolbox. All right, thanks for tuning in. And there it is, recording, and it's going to stop this recording anyway. So there we go. Hey, there we go. It actually worked out. It didn't interfere with my screen cap. So there's a nice little 6-second recording of everything there. All right.